हेलो फ्रेंड्स, आज हम एक बहुत ही इम्पॉर्टेंट टॉपिक पे डिस्कशन करेंगे विच इज़ एब्डोमेन एग्जामिनेशन. नाउ दिस इज़ वन ऑफ द मोस्ट इम्पॉर्टेंट टॉपिक एज फार एज द सर्जरी साइंस इज कंसर्न, बोथ फॉर अंडर ग्रेजुएट्स एज वेल एज पोस्ट ग्रेजुएट्स. हम in surgical specialty most of our diseases are restricted in abdomen, and 70% of the time the diagnosis is crunched on a good examination. Also, for examination purpose, both for entrance as well as exit, this is a very important skill set which everyone should have. So before we go to the actual examination, there are some prerequisites to do a good abdomen examination. The first thing is the setting. Now you should have a good bright lit room, which is natural light is the best because you appreciate the color changes very well in that natural light. But if it is not there, a well lit natural white light should be the thing. So lighting is there. The temperature of the room should be ambient because most of the time we'll ask the patient to remove their clothes. So it should not be too cold. If it is there, you should have a blanket handy so that you can cover the patient as soon as possible. Third thing is the patient should be relaxed. He should not be apprehensive. So you should have talked to the patient before you start the examination. You should have taken the proper consent from the patient. When I say consent, it means that you should have explained what you are going to do, whether the procedure involves any painful experiences or anywhere if the patient will be required to remove their clothes and expose their private parts. So it should be explained to them beforehand. Otherwise, it might create in some anxiety and you might get some error in examination. Another important thing in today's world is attendant. Now, there should be a female chaperone or a male attendant depending on your gender and the patient gender. So if a male person is examining a female subject, there should be a female attendant, and if a female doctor is examining a male person, there again has to be a male attendant with them. Preferably they should from the hospital staff. Generally many people choose to take the relative of the patient. I would suggest it's not a good idea, it's not a good choice, but if there is no other option, obviously you can go ahead with that, but some attendant has to be there. So then we come to the examination proper. The position of the patient should be lying supine. The head end of the bed should be elevated by 15 degrees, or you can use a pillow. Here we have elevated the head end by 15 degrees, so we don't need the pillow. Patient can be relaxed. Similarly, there can be another pillow on the below the knee. Either you can ask the patient to flex the knees, but with this what happens is the pelvic bone, it rotates whenever you flex the thighs. So it will kind of hamper the examination in the lower abdomen. So that's why it's not a very good idea. The best thing is to keep a pillow under the knees. Now the whole range of abdomen is available for examination, and patient's abdominal muscles are also relaxed. So this posture basically relaxes the abdominal muscle and it helps you in your palpation. Okay. Then comes what part we need to expose. Now ideally the patient should be exposed from the nipple to mid thigh level, but for this recording purpose and to respect the privacy of the patient, in this video we'll just expose the abdomen part. So important landmarks are the xiphoid process, then there is a costal margin on both sides. Similarly, ASIS on both sides. So this becomes the abdomen region proper. Now we draw some lines to divide this whole region into 9 segments. When somebody asks how many quadrants it has, quadrants are always 4, which is right upper, left lower and right lower. So these are 4 quadrants which you do it by joining a line, a vertical line and a horizontal line across the umbilicus. But more important than that are the 9 regions. So what we do is we identify the mid point of this line, which corresponds to the mid clavicular line here, and then mid-inguinal point, which is the midpoint of anterior superior iliac spine and the pubic symphysis. So you draw a line joining them. Similarly on the other side. Then we draw two transverse lines or horizontal lines. The top line passes through the 9th costal cartilage. So be careful here. This is the 10th costal cartilage. So we go right above that. Here is the 9th costal cartilage. Okay. So you draw a line from there. Okay. And then you draw a line which is called as the transtubercular plane, which joins the two tubercles of the iliac crest. Now, tubercle of iliac crest is 5 centimeter above and behind the ASIS. So somewhere here, and you draw two lines there. A very important point to note here is see the right hypochondric region. Now, in most of the patient, you will realize that whole of the hypochondric region is masked by the costal margins or the rib cage. So you will not be able to palpate anything. Now, any student who says, I am palpating a 5 into 5 centimeter lump in right hypochondrium, I straight away know that this person doesn't know the anatomical regions. So this is very important to note, and that is why I always advise to draw the findings, whatever you are getting, in form of a diagram after you have drawn the segments. Okay, so this is very important to recognize these. Now, each segment is important because the signs or the symptoms in those regions, they correspond to different visceras, and that's how our differential diagnosis will come up. We'll start the examination by inspection. Now, for inspection, we want to observe any subtle movements in the abdomen, any subtle swellings, any visible scratch marks or ulcer or fistula or discharges on the skin of the abdomen cavity. Also, we want to see whether there is any fullness in any quadrant, whether all the quadrants are moving well with respiration or not, because if any certain quadrant is not moving, it's a sign of inflammation or pathology in that particular area. Now, to appreciate these changes, you cannot look to the abdomen from top because you will miss these findings. So, what you have to do is you have to come down at the level of abdomen and then appreciate, and not only from the side but from the leg end as well. And spend some time in inspection, because very subtle signs is one of the most sensitive part of abdomen examination, because we have seen that palpation can falter because it is dependent on the patient's response to it. At the step of inspection, you have not touched the abdomen as yet, so it's like virgin land. So you can actually appreciate a lot of things which might not be there afterwards. So spend some time here, observe very subtle movements if they are happening, and record your findings accordingly. Now, while doing palpation, the most important thing is the position of your hand, and this is the point I think most people make mistakes with. Now, a very typical posture of people will be like palpating like this. Okay. Now, this is a very wrong thing, because as soon as you're trying to poke your fingers in abdomen, the patient will contract his abdomen muscles and he will not let you examine anything. So, your position of hand is very important. So, ideal position is your forearm should be parallel to the surface on which the patient is lying. Okay, this is a very important step, and your whole hand should be resting on the abdomen, and then with the pulp of your finger, you should be palpating the abdomen. This is how it is done, and you will realize that the patient very easily, patient will be relaxed, he will have a confidence on you that you will not hurt him, and all the abdominal muscles will be relaxed, and you will be able to palpate even very subtle findings in abdomen. Okay. So, there are two segments of palpation. One is called the superficial palpation, where you just gently palpate for some tender points, some superficial swellings or anything quadrant wise, so that you don't miss out any area in the abdomen. the cardinal rule is that the patient the segment where patient is having pain or any complaint should be examined at the end, because if it's a painful area and you have examined it, you have initiated a tender response, and patient will contract the muscle, patient will guard, and will not let you examine anymore. So that is why it should be examined at the end. So while doing deep palpation with the same posture, you let the patient breathe. You ask the patient to take deep breaths, and with every expiration, you go further deep and try to palpate for any organomegaly, any visceral swellings, or any findings in that level. But at all this time, you should remember to bend down so that your forearm is parallel to the bed on which patient is lying. This is the most critical point. By this, you'll be able to palpate most of the findings, and you record them according to this diagram. So you draw this segments on a piece of paper, on the case file or wherever, and then label these findings. For example, let's say if you find hepatomegaly, you can depict hepatomegaly. And if you find a gallbladder lump, it will appear something like here, which is a pear shape or a rounded swelling here. You can feel for splenomegaly in this region. Okay, you can feel a renal lump somewhere here in the flanks, or similarly something like that. So these can be the various findings which we'll record. Whenever we find a lump in abdomen, it is a very important thing for us to note whether it's a parietal swelling or it's an intraperitoneal swelling. To do this, we do a simple test like head raise test and leg raise test. The concept of these tests is they make the muscle, mainly the rectus abdominis, taut, and when it contracts, if the swelling is superficial to the muscle, it will become more prominent. If it is deeper to it, it will become less prominent. So that's the main concept of this test. Now we can use other maneuvers also, which we'll talk later. So first, talk about the head raise test, which is done for supraumbilical, or which is the superior to umbilicus, those swellings. Okay, can you do a head raise? So when the patient lifts his head, you find that the muscle is contracting and this area becomes taut, and then you palpate the same swelling which you were palpating previously at this position. Similarly, if the swelling is below umbilicus or in infraumbilical region, then you do something called as leg raise test. Now in leg raise test, the rectus abdominis contract to rotate the pelvis and to stabilize at that point, and that is the main purpose of this test. Lift. So if he is lifting, you can see that the rectus abdominis in the inferior part mainly has contracted. For liver, we always palpate from below, from the iliac fossa region, and we come up, trying to palpate with every breath, and with every inspiration, the viscera will come down, and you can expect if there is a organomegaly, the liver border will hit against your finger. So don't try to push your hand towards the liver and try to palpate it. Rather, let your finger stay here and let the liver come and hit it, and that's the best way to appreciate the liver borders. Similarly, for spleen, you palpate, because mostly the spleen grows in the direction of right iliac fossa. So you palpate from again right iliac fossa going towards the original area of the spleen. Okay. Similar thing which you do for liver. For kidney, generally we use a bimanual palpation, because kidney is very deep down. So to appreciate the contours and character of kidney swellings, you'll have to push the kidney towards the palpating fingers. So put your hand behind the patient's back, just lateral to the spinal muscles, and try to push gently with the fingers, and then with the palpating finger, try to feel for any lump in this area. Now again, please observe that I am keeping whole of my hand. I am not at any point I'm doing this. Okay, at no point I'm palpating from my tip of my finger. At every time I'm palpating from the pulp of my finger. So try to palpate any swelling here. If you feel any swelling here, try to do something called as bimanual palpation. Try to rock the kidney lump by the posterior fingers and feel if it comes and hits you in the front observing fingers. Next we come to percussion. Percussion may what we want to see are few things. We want to percuss the swellings or the lumps which you are palpated. We want to percuss for organomegalies like liver and spleen, and we also want to percuss for free fluid. These are the main things. So if there are any lump which you have palpated in a palpation part, percuss on that part. Now how to do a percussion is, should keep one finger on the surface and then using 3 finger. I generally use 3 finger. Many people can use 1 finger or whatever. I'm showing you what I do. And using the wrist motion, you percuss. You don't have to go very close to hear the sounds, because if you're doing it in the right way, the sound will be there. And just try to appreciate and train your ears to and percuss like this. Okay, and basically with practice, your ears will get trained and you will be able to appreciate the subtle differences between resonant and tympanic and dull sounds. The second important thing is percussing the liver. Now, always start from below, where you will have a naturally tympanic sound, and at one point you will find that it will turn dull, like this is a point here, it has turned dull. Then go palpating up, dull, dull, dull. Now suddenly you find here the sound has changed to resonant sound. So, and you record the point upper margin where the sound has changed. So, these will be the 2 points. At mid clavicular level, you have to record this distance, and this will be the liver span, which is very important. Now, why it is important is, many a time you, let's say, felt a organomegaly or a hepatomegaly here, and then you made a deduction that liver is enlarged. But whereas when you while doing the percussion, you might find that the upper margin is here and not here. So actually what is happening is, there is some subdiaphragmatic pathology which is pushing the liver down. Okay, so to differentiate between the actual organomegaly or hepatomegaly versus push down liver, you need to percuss the liver and measure the liver span. Then only you can label the person as hepatomegaly or not. Then we percuss for free fluid in abdomen. Now for that we do something called as shifting dullness. Now shifting dullness means there is a dullness at one point which has shifted to some other point, okay, which we will demonstrate here. So you start palpating in the percussing in the midline, starting from above. Now this is done to rule out an enlarged urinary bladder. So because if the urinary bladder is enlarged, you might get a dull point here, which might be mistaken as a free fluid. So make sure you ruled that out, and then you percuss laterally towards the flank. There will be if there is a fluid, there will be a point where the sound will turn into dullness. Okay. Now keeping your finger at that point, you ask the patient to turn on the other side. Can you turn on the other side? Now it is very important to wait for at least 15 to 20 seconds here. Don't immediately start percussing at this point. If there was a free fluid, the fluid would have shifted downwards and leaving this area again tympanic. So this is what you want to appreciate. And the point where here earlier it was tympanic, now because the fluid is there, so it will become dull now. So this is called as the shifting dullness. So once you have demonstrated that the dullness has shifted from here to here, this is the sign is proven. Right on straight. Now for shifting dullness to be positive, you at least need 500 ml of fluid in the abdomen cavity. If there is a less than that, there is a different test are available. like Puddle test you might read in their books, but it's a very uncomfortable test, and the accuracy of this test is not very high. That's why generally we don't recommend this test, and the best modality at that point would be an ultrasound scan. Okay, if the fluid is more than that, we'll do a fluid thrill, which can be easily demonstrated. So for that, you can ask your assistant or the patient himself to keep a hand at the midpoint, and keeping one palpating finger hand on the other side, and give a flicks on the other side. And if you are able to feel some vibrations or some waveforms on your other hand, that means there is a fluid. It happens when there is a more than 500 ml fluid in the abdomen. Now, it can happen that the fluid is enormous, where you might not get anything. So then it will be very simply because of the distension of abdomen, you can say there's a massive amount of fluid inside the. Next, we come to auscultation. Auscultation basically picks the bowel sound in abdomen as well as some vascular sounds. Now, there are very rare scenarios where vascular sounds will be heard in abdomen. So, we will not talk about that, but in extremities, in thyroid, in other areas, that can be important. Some hemangiomas have shown to have venous hums and some vascular sounds, but in abdomen, mostly it is done for bowel sounds. So, to auscultate for bowel sounds, you put the diaphragm of the stethoscope just on the right side of the umbilicus, and try to listen for the bowel gurgling kind of sounds. Typically, there are 1 to 3 vowel sounds per minute. You listen to it approximately 5 minutes, and if you can't hear any vowel sound, then only you label the patient as silent abdomen or there are no vowel sounds. Don't just auscultate for 1 minute and say there's no vowel sound and it is okay, because vowel sounds vary a lot in frequency, in how they happen. So if you are able to hear 1 to 3 in 1 minute, you can stop there. If you are not able to hear, continue auscultating for at least 5 minutes before saying that the patient has no vowel sounds.